When the Whitlow siblings inherited the old cabin in Dunvale Hollow, they thought it was a gift. But some gifts are meant to be buried, not opened. The creaky car wound its way through the thick, clinging fog, the trees on either side of the road leaning in like a tunnel about to swallow them whole. Claire stared out the window, her quiet, thoughtful eyes taking in the familiar yet strangely alien landscape. "It's smaller than I remember," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Her brother Thomas managed a strained grin. "Smaller? Try haunted." As they stepped out of the car, the air hummed. It wasn't a sound you could hear with your ears, but a low, almost living pulse you felt in your bones. The hollow was the kind of place where the air grew thicker at sunset, where shadows took their time to leave, and where rules, 3 simple ones, were the only thing that kept you alive. That evening, their Aunt Martha sat in a rocking chair by the flickering candlelight, her frail form casting a dancing, monstrous shadow on the wall. Her hands, thin and bird-like, trembled as she slid a faded, yellowed note across the worn wooden table. The ink was old, the handwriting spidery. It read, "Never go outside after sunset. Always leave food on the porch at night, and never, ever speak the forest's name." Thomas burst out laughing, a harsh sound that shattered the quiet. "What is this? Some kind of bedtime story?" Martha's eyes, far too sharp for her age, fixed on him. "It's not a story, boy. It's a promise. Our blood's been paying it for 100 years. Just then, lightning flashed outside, illuminating her face for a single, horrifying second. She looked almost skeletal, a ghost from the past warning them of the future. Every family in Dunvale had a rule, a strange local custom to appease the land. The Whitlows just happened to have 3, and one stubborn man who was ready to break them all. That first night, as evening bled into the sky, Claire dutifully set a small steaming bowl of stew on the porch. The woods hissed with a sudden wind, and she felt a prickle of unease on her neck. Thomas watched her from the window, his arms crossed. "Feeding raccoons again, huh?" "It's just for peace of mind," she replied, quickly shutting and locking the door behind her. The camera of our minds pans to the bowl, sitting alone in the gathering gloom. For a long while, it remains untouched. Then, a flicker of movement in the shadows. A root, shaped unnervingly like a gnarled hand, creeps silently from the dark soil. It curls around the bowl, its wooden fingers tightening, and drags the offering into the deep black of the trees. The hollow always took what it was given, but hunger grows when the feast is late. The next night, Thomas's patience snapped. Frustration boiled over into anger. He stormed out onto the porch, his flashlight beam cutting a frantic path through the darkness. "I'm not feeding the damn forest anymore. You hear me?" He punctuated his rage by kicking the offering bowl, sending it clattering into the dirt. The trees stood utterly, profoundly silent. And silence is the forest's way of smiling. Later that night, the wind began to howl, rattling the old cabin's windows. Then came a new sound. A knock on the door, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat against the wood. Claire, her own heart pounding in her chest, crept to the door and opened it just a crack. There was nothing there, just footprints in the damp earth. They were bare, human, and they led directly into the waiting trees. The next morning, the sun seemed weaker, filtered through a permanent gray haze. Claire found Thomas asleep on the couch, his breathing heavy. She noticed his hands and the cuffs of his jeans were caked with fresh, dark mud. A cold dread settled in her stomach. She walked outside, her sketchbook clutched in her hand. And she saw it. The trees. Their bark was different. Carved into them were faces, hundreds of them, all twisted in a silent, eternal scream. And one, freshly carved, looked just like her brother. The hollow didn't kill its trespassers. It didn't need to. It remembered them, carving their likenesses into its very ribs, a permanent gallery of the disobedient. A whisper, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, slithered from the tree line. It sounded like her name. Claire. Her hands went numb, and she dropped her sketchbook. It fell open to a page she didn't remember drawing. It was a picture of herself, standing alone in the woods at night, her face pale in the moonlight. That night, the porch bowl was back in its place, but this time it was filled to the brim with something dark and viscous. Blood. Claire stumbled backward, a strangled cry caught in her throat. She looked around frantically for Thomas, but he was gone. The front door, which she had locked and bolted, suddenly burst open with a deafening crack. A gale of wind howled through the cabin, carrying the thick, cloying smell of pine and decay. And then she saw him. He was at the edge of the woods, entangled in a writhing mass of roots that seemed to be pulling him down into the earth. His eyes were wide with a terror she couldn't comprehend, and he was whispering, his voice carried on the wind. "Feed it, Claire, or it feeds on us." The woods do not forgive. They collect. They remember. They feed. Inside the cabin, their Aunt Martha had passed away. Her heart had simply stopped, the doctor would have said, if a doctor ever came to Dunvale Hollow. Desperation is a cold, sharp thing. Claire, trembling and weeping, dragged her aunt's frail body onto the porch. It was the only offering she had left. She laid her down and stumbled back inside. Through the window, she watched as the trees themselves began to move. Branches, thick as pythons, reached down like arms. The forest took her aunt, but it was gentle, almost reverent. The roots that had held Thomas retreated back into the soil, and the woods let out a long, contented sigh. Claire watched, tears streaming down her face, and whispered into the sudden quiet, "I'll keep the rules. I promise." And she did. For years, she was the perfect keeper. Every night, a bowl on the porch. Every night, silence. Until one night. She forgot the bowl. The sun shines brightly on a new day in Dunvale Hollow. A shiny realtor's car crunches up the old dirt road. A cheerful young couple steps out, their faces full of hopeful smiles as they gaze upon the rustic, charming cabin. The Whitlow cabin is up for sale again. The forest waits patiently. Hunger never dies. It just changes hands. Thank you for joining us in the Hollow. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to feed the like button and subscribe to Horror Signal TV for more stories that lurk in the shadows. Thanks for watching.